I'm going to say something slightly controversial, but please wait for me to finish. I think Indians and India have a stated preference versus revealed preference problem. I'll tell you what that means. Stated preference means if you go to a wedding and you ask one of the uncles there, what do you think about this? They will tell you one thing. But if you actually look at their behavior, what do they spend on? Where do they spend their time? Where does their attention go? A lot of it is not exactly what they told you. Now, this is not just an India problem. This is a problem with human beings. And one of the topics in this particular case is the topic of the West, the topic of America. If you ask the average Indian whether you are inspired by America or whether you think India is inspired by America, most people say, no, my inspiration comes from India, our past, our culture, our history, which is great. But if you look at their behavior, if you look at the flow of money, if you look at the flow of venture dollars, it looks like a parroting of the West. Now, my personal stance on this is, I don't think it matters. My own goal for life is I want to be a student. I am not too attached with anything. I love my country, obviously, but I'm also willing to learn from anywhere. If something is popular in America right now, chances are it will be popular in India a year later. This happened with everything, even things I never imagined. For example, veganism, the way we dress, the way we talk, a lot of inspiration comes from America. And today, any good VC in India who's making a bet behind a company is always going to ask the founders, is there proof of this working somewhere else? Because it turns out, if there is no proof of it working anywhere else in the world, not just in America, but at least in China or even Zimbabwe, somewhere, if there's no proof, then that VC is taking a massive risk. He's taking a very local cultural bet on India, and most of the time, without proof, it's a hard sell even internally. The point is, on this channel, we are here to learn. If there's a report that comes from China that's interesting and there's something to learn, I'm happy to break it down for you. And today, I have a very exciting report from America by a VC called Coefficient Capital in partnership with the New Consumer. It's about consumer trends in America. And I know some of you will click off the video because you'll say, Varun, it's America, I don't care. But the truth is, there are business lessons there. Whether you like America or not, a year later, some of those things that are popular today there for consumers are going to make it here. This could guide a lot of things for you. How do you make investments? Where do you work? What job opportunities you take on? Where are the business opportunities for you to start something? All of these things are probably hidden in this report if you pay close attention. So without much further ado, let's break this down. So the report has 3 headlines. It's AI, Ozempic, and the economy. And there's a lot of hidden insights and nuggets in here. So let's dive right in. So credits where credits are due. Let me talk about the New Consumer first. It was launched in 2019 by a former business journalist called Dan Frommer. The New Consumer basically explored where and how do people spend their money. It's mostly analysis, research, trends, and advisory. So do go check them out. The link's in the description below. Now, this report is in partnership with Coefficient Capital that invests in consumer brands. They were launched in 2018 by Franklin Isaacson and Andrew Goletka. They invest mostly in digitally powered consumer brands, and they focus on transformational consumer shifts. One thing we've noticed, I'm sure in India and all over the world, every few years a big shift happens and lots of behavior changes. The underlying desires are the same of human beings. That hasn't changed in 200,000 years, but a lot of the way we express those desires has changed. This report is about profound changes in the consumer landscape, and this is mostly centered around the West. And I can guarantee you, a lot of what I read in the report is going to be in India in a while. You can take advantage of this. So most of how they do this is through consumer trends surveys. They survey about 3,000 US customers and they give us insights. By the way, I've done a little bit of this in the past where I just go on my Instagram, I put up a poll, and I'll have 10,000 people answer that poll. The problem with those reports or the problem with that poll is it's very biased. My audience is English speaking and mostly interested in tech and content. So it's very unlikely, even though I'd have a larger sample size, that would be an accurate representation of India. But now that we run many more channels and we have different niches that each of these channels operate in, I think there's a lot of value in us doing these reports across channels to try and eliminate bias. The entire idea behind Breakdown is break down quality reports, or ideally make them ourselves by doing really great surveys, trying our level best to avoid bias, and keeping a sense of rigor through our entire process. It's hard, but we want to try. The first thing is that AI is everywhere. In 2023, online news articles about AI went through the roof. A lot of this was on the back of ChatGPT and the miracle that was GPT 3.5. Let me be honest, when I tried it, when I tried DALL-E, my mind was blown. I'm sure a lot of you had the same experience. And obviously, AI is the #1 trend we're going to talk about today in the US. More importantly, it's not just consumers talking about AI. If you look at a similar wave 2 years ago, which was the blockchain wave, most of the conversation around blockchain was from end consumers. Companies were very iffy talking about it. But with AI, companies just can't get enough.
Generative AI.
The mentions of artificial intelligence on quarterly earnings call transcripts analyzed by Bloomberg looked like this. Just look at that jump. From the first quarter of 2017 to the last quarter of last year, there was barely any mention or talk of AI, even though GPT in its prior forms existed. In quarter 1 of 2023, that completely changed. Look at that spike, and these are in earnings calls. Executives at companies are very careful about what they tell their investors, and if they're talking about AI, that means they're actually excited about putting that into action in the next quarter. A lot of you know that I also create AI content. This is not just because I studied neural networks in college or did computer science in college, but I've actually been following OpenAI's work ever since a bunch of OpenAI bots beat world-class Dota players. Dota is a game that I've been playing for a very long time, and it's not by any means a simple game. It requires 5 players to coordinate. It requires you to anticipate what your opponents are going to do. It's not a very easy problem to solve. So when I saw OpenAI bots kicking the ass of real humans at this game, which is pretty complicated, and has a 4 to 5 year learning curve till you get good at the game, I was like, hey, there is something here. Little did I know that that exact same company would be the subject of earnings calls from executives today. Now you might say, well, Varun, AI has been around for a while. Why now? And the report says many reasons. Firstly, it's another decade of technological advancements in algorithms, computing power, data, network. I mean, we've had several small shifts across different industries that cumulatively laid the path for AI, even though I don't think the intent was AI. Like, for example, a lot of graphic cards didn't get better because of AI. They got better because gamers demanded it and blockchain mining enthusiasts demanded it, and AI just happened to take advantage of it. So not all of this was thought through. Some of this was incidental. Secondly, useful and novel products are coming to the market, such as ChatGPT and Midjourney. I'll tell you one thing. There has not been a single day over the last 8 months that I haven't used ChatGPT. And there hasn't been a single week over the last 8 months that I haven't used Midjourney or any other image generation tool. One big difference from the past is that consumers are now trained to adopt new tech. We no longer shy away and say, hey, somebody else teach me this, because the tech's also easy to use. It's just a chat interface in most cases, and the learning curve is short. It's very, very easy for people to learn this technology, and therefore a consumer feels in power. A lot of execs are also hiding behind it. They've had a bad quarter, markets have been poor, there was a zero interest phenomenon that was happening for the last few years. Now the markets have corrected, everything's on free fall, and a lot of execs need a new growth story to sell their investors. This can potentially be that growth story, and to be very honest, it does change the entire game. In fact, half of Gen Z and Millennial customers already claim they are very familiar with AI. Take a look at this graph. 52% of Gen Z believes they are extremely or very familiar with AI. 55% of millennials believe they're very familiar with AI. With Gen X, the rate is about 30%, and boomers are 10% comfortable with AI. Now, in India, there is a lag time. If you go out on the streets and ask people about ChatGPT, believe it or not, if you go in a tier 1 urban street, maybe you'll have a lot of people that are aware. But if you go to a street in tier 2 or tier 3 India, the knowledge level around AI or ChatGPT or Midjourney is actually pretty low. In terms of awareness, ChatGPT leads among the next gen AI tools. So take a look at this graph. ChatGPT is number 1, followed by Bard. Now, I definitely thought that Midjourney would be more popular than Bard, but it turns out Bard is number 2. In fact, Bing, Firefly, DALL-E, Copilot, Jasper, Stable Diffusion are all above Midjourney. I really expected Midjourney to be above Stable Diffusion, but it turns out the average consumer has other priorities. Now let's talk about work and jobs. 28% of US workers say they're worried AI will replace them at work within 5 years. Percentage of extremely or very worried responses by household income. One of the cool things about this survey is they also stratified these people answering this question by household income. It's a very interesting graph. Take a look at it. If people were making under $25,000 a year, which is not great in the US, 29% were worried that AI would replace them in the next 5 years. As they went to the $50,000 to $75,000 range, most of these people were not that worried. But as they got to skills and jobs that require more cognitive effort, more of those people were worried. 34% of people making more than 150K an annum, which is about 1.2 crores in Indian rupees in the US, were worried that AI would take their jobs in the next 5 years. Take a look at that. Nearly 50% of people who were extremely familiar with AI were worried that it would take their jobs. People who are not familiar or the least familiar with AI were more likely to say, no, this is not going to take my job. This is a reflection of two things, right? I think the more you're aware of AI, the more you're a cognitive worker. And AI does come after cognitive jobs. It is going to go after some cognitive jobs in the next 5 years. It's inevitable. And the less you're exposed to AI, you're more likely doing a physical job. So I don't think AI is coming for physical jobs in the next few years. Although I could be wrong, the rate of progress has been phenomenal. But it's interesting to note that the more people are familiar with AI, the more they are worried about their jobs being taken. Most high-earning workers in the US say they've already used AI tools for work. People who make less money are claiming they don't. It's weird. The more money that these people are making, the more they're looking for tools that speed up their workflows. This is common among almost every intelligent person that I met. Once somebody is proven that they have signs of intelligence, they always look for ways to speed up what they're doing. And now there's a very powerful $20 a tool month that can be your go-to assistant. I don't think anyone's going to say no to a smart assistant at their desk. People making more than $200,000 in the US, which is 1.6 crores in Indian rupees, were 63% familiar with using AI tools. Most 100K plus household workers, which is people making more than 80 lakhs a year, think AI will help them be more productive. 60%, in fact, of people making more than 150K a year said, hey, this is going to make me be more productive. And where exactly are we now? GitHub's OpenAI powered Copilot in Feb 2023 said that an average of 46% of code being built using GitHub Copilot and 61% among developers using Java. And this is up from 27% of code in June 2022. They claim that it helps developers code up to 55% faster. That's already a big productivity gain for companies if that number 55% is to be believed. AI-generated business and marketing ideas are already close. I do know a few Indian marketing agencies who have already executed AI-generated content for customers. Believe it or not, in blind tests by data firm Dig Insights, human survey takers equally preferred ideas generated by real humans as they did by its AI tool. This is weird, right? A lot of people believe AI might not take our jobs, but if you give random humans blinded outputs of AI-generated content and real content, they are not able to really tell which was made by humans and which was made by AI. Now, there are several fields like video where this is not true. You can easily tell when a video is generated by AI today. But in places like text and images, it's getting really hard to tell. And to a business, an employee costs $100K a year, this tool costs $200 a year. It's such a big difference that a lot of businesses are thinking it through. But not all hope is lost. There are fields where customers believe this is not true. They asked a question. Suppose you need to consult or hire an X. Which would you trust more, AI or human? And in the fields of doctor, lawyer, assistant, and financial advisor, almost everyone chose human. In fields like medicine or law, where a small error rate could either kill you or put you behind bars, you don't want to take the risk. So even the small chance of a ChatGPT hallucinating is not worth it. But in fields like graphic design, where it's okay to generate 1,000 outputs and pick the one that you like the most, people are more forgiving. Like I said, the tools are there, they're getting better, but at the end of the day, it's consumer desires and their trust towards either a human or a robot that determines what they will end up spending on. Self-proclaimed AI experts are more likely to say that they trust an AI doctor. For some reason, in a lot of my comments, people say, Varun, you're an AI expert. I don't think, at least in the world of generative AI, there are experts. It's been around for too short a period of time. We just had the good fortune of experimenting with it a little early, and we got some users on our products, so we kind of saw what their behavior was like. And the way this field is, if you don't spend every day of your time on it, in 2 weeks, you're out of date. I actually spend 1 or 2 hours every single day going through the tools and figuring out, is this viable? Is this not viable? Is this bullshit? Is this not bullshit? And then I create content around it. So I'm familiar with the tool, but I would still trust a human doctor over an AI doctor. And the reason for this is because I understand a little bit about medicine because I've had my tryst with the medical system for a very long time. And even though human doctors are not perfect, they make mistakes all the time. It is that they are responsive to mistakes. In the sense, if they give you the wrong drug and you end up in the hospital because of an allergic reaction to that drug, let's assume, they will still take care of you. They will admit their mistake and fix it. And AI right now doesn't have the agency to fix its mistakes. And more importantly, a lot of the content on PubMed, if you've actually been through PubMed, which is where a lot of abstract and sometimes full medical papers are out, you'll notice that there are lots of studies where there's contradictory evidence. For example, take resveratrol, which is usually found in red wine. There are lots of conflicting studies around the substance. Some reports say that resveratrol increases the activity of T cells, which is a part of your immune system. And some studies say it reduces the activity of T cells. And it doesn't seem to be dependent on the dose. It seems to be dependent on the specific microenvironment that resveratrol gets to act in. And here's where my experienced fine-tuning models help. I know that if you fine-tune Claude or Llama 2 or GPT on PubMed, you're bound to find not so accurate and slightly hallucinatory answers to questions like this, where examples exist of both the positive as well as the negative. The way to solve this is a method called reinforcement learning by human feedback, where doctors actually sit there and rate every answer, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a rating scale. The problem is medicine is so vast and different expert doctors in the same field have different opinions. However, there's one place where I do agree that AI will help, and that is in diagnostics. So a very interesting thing happens in India, where if you get an X-ray done, not only do you get the films, but you also get a radiological report. There is somebody looking at your films and saying, this is what I think about it. And I think that part can actually be replaced by AI because it's fairly easy to train a classifier. We can kind of predict what their outputs are going to be like. And it's not a black box like an LLM where you can't predict exactly what it's going to do. Let's move on to AI and culture. Have you seen this picture? There's actually a famously viral picture of the Pope wearing cool clothes. It went viral on Twitter. I remember seeing it on my feed. And 33% saying yes is actually pretty significant. That means people are now in the know, either through information on Reddit, which then gets passed on to Twitter, which then gets passed on to Instagram via Reels and Shorts and whatnot. I think the cycle between something cool happening and a Gen Z or a Millennial learning about it is pretty short. It's a few days. And not just that, out of the 33%, 62% said, yes, I know this was generated by AI. And this is a little bit of bad news for artists and photographers and whatnot. When Gen Z and Millennial consumers were asked, do you think AI art is real art? Nearly half of them said, yes, I think AI art is real art. Weirdly, boomers, who are really old people, said, no, I don't think AI art is real art. So I think this decision of is AI art real art is a matter of perception, not of any reality, because most people aren't able to tell. If you remember Midjourney from 2 years ago and Midjourney from today, I think if you give it another year or 2 years, it will be very unlikely that even I will be able to tell. And I'm just going to assume by default that every image is AI generated. So if that's not art, then what is? How do you prove that something is real art? You have to draw it on paint and canvas, because robotic arms can do that as well, and it's pretty cheap. In fact, an Indian had created a low budget handwriting tool, and it's the same mechanism you'd use to create art. When asked, will AI become the dominant form of entertainment, 41% of Gen Z and Millennial consumers at least somewhat agree that 20 years from now, by the way, 20 years is a long time in this space considering we're on an exponential curve, most music, movies, art, and books will be created with AI. I kind of agree with this. My timelines are shorter. 39% of Gen Z and Millennials, which is just 2% lesser than the previous stat, said that 20 years from now, the best, not most, but the best movies will be created with AI. Most Gen Z and Millennial users have already said that they use AI tools for fun. From the Lensas of the world to the RVCs, I think it's a lot of fun playing with AI, and I think everyone should play with AI because it's just so much fun and you get to see this technology evolve in real time. At least with the open source repositories, use something today, 6 months later there's something that makes the previous thing look really bad, and 12 months later there's something that's even better, right? So it's amazing watching this technology evolve in real time. Next, let's move to AI in society. The question is, what will AI do for or to society? So 53% of people said there's going to be a total lack of trust in visual and or audio content. I think this is true, and there's already examples of plausible deniability where a politician has actually said something bad on a call and then said, no, this is AI generated. So people can also hide behind it. 52% of people think that there's going to be acceleration in scientific advancement, obviously. 47% of people think that mass transformation and evolution of jobs are going to happen. I am hoping that the idea of jobs, the concept of jobs disappear in total. The modern concept of job, where you go to college and then get a job and do that till you die, is actually very, very new. It's like 300 years old of the 200,000 year history that humans have been around. We've always had roles, divisions, and IOUs, but never in the current form. There's obviously going to be an acceleration of creativity in arts and entertainment. 41% of people think there's going to be mass unemployment. 40% think there's going to be increased income inequality. 38% of people think there's going to be increased social inequality, which is gender, race, etc. 34% of people think that AI will turn on us and robots will take over. And 31% of people believe there's going to be implementation of UBI, which is Universal Basic Income. And 27% of people think that there's going to be zero change to society. Social displacement, privacy, and job displacement are the biggest issues or concerns that people have with AI. And I fairly agree, although I think with social manipulation, we'll develop an immune system very quickly to fake content. Or at least we'll be alert that maybe this can be fake content. So I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact as we think it will. The next one is an interesting question. Who do you think should regulate AI? A, should be the government. B, should it be companies? C, should it be state governments? D, it should be external non-governmental organizations, and then so on and so forth. Only 30% of people think that AI should not be regulated. That is wild. And that's very interesting. 27% of people said there's going to be no impact to society at all, but only 12% of people said AI should not be regulated. So the missing 14% confuses me. The next thing is, does AI have political opinions? 30% said yes, 47% said no, 23% said not sure. The next question was, if yes, do they align with the US political party? 60% of people said yes, it aligns with one party. Now this part is interesting. From those who identify as Republican, which in the US is the right, they believe that 52% aligns with them and 42% aligns with the other side, which is fine. Of those that identify as Democrats or the left, they believe that AI is unanimously aligned with them. This is a very interesting stat because I can guarantee you this is going to be mirrored in some way in India. And finally, while younger generations are more excited by AI, the older generations are worried. Now, this report doesn't end here. There's a lot more, which we will cover in part 2 of Breakdown. Thank you for joining me. I know this was an abrupt ending, but I wanted to leave you with all this information to digest it. We'll be covering part 2 in the next episode. Make sure you subscribe for insights that keep you ahead of everybody else. Bye.